about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love.
Okay, welcome back to Unsolved No More. Today we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into an equivocal death. And for those of you who don't know what equivocal death is, that's when you have a death and you or medical examiner, coroner, detectives don't know what to classify it. As in, it's not a natural cause, it's not them taking their own life, and it's not homicide or accident. What is it? Those are cases that are very intriguing to me. And this case is going to be a perfect example of how difficult not only a cold case detective's job is, or a regular detective's job, but also family and friends. And I'll explain. So, Tony Brown was a white male, age 22, and he met his demise at the Old Top Rail Ballroom in Dallas, Texas. And this was on December 14th, 1987. So let me give you the backstory of this case. There's somebody that had reached out to me who was with Tony on this night, which is great to have that eyewitness testimony. But not only did she have the eyewitness testimony, she is vested in the case. She wants to know, what's wrong here. Things don't add up. And so she got some police reports, autopsy reports, photographs, crime scene stuff, and she had sent it to me a while ago. And I finally had gotten around to look at it. And although it's an equivocal death, it is reported that it's more than likely an accidental gunshot wound. And so I had read that. I had gone through what she had given me fairly quickly. I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but she had written down a lot of stuff, typed out her timeline, took her time, and trusted me to send all that stuff to me. And so I looked at it, and I wanted to get back to her. I wanted to look at it. I had a lot of other stuff going on at the time, but I wanted to look at it for her and give her what I thought. So a couple weeks ago, I looked at it and I gave her my opinion. But then a couple days ago, I was laying in bed, how it happens sometimes, and I was thinking about the case, and there was a couple things that kept going through my mind that I was like, number one, this girl deserves more than what I gave her. I need to spend a little bit more time on it. Two, there's some things that don't make sense to me, and when that happens, it bothers me. And I have to figure it out why it's bothering me. What is it? So, in this case, I went back downstairs at 3 in the morning, whatever it was, and looked at the crime scene photos again. And listen, just because something's moved, just because something is out of place, doesn't necessarily mean anything. There could be a simple explanation for it. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't look into it. So I looked at the crime scene photos, and I will show some things to you here, and we will discuss before we get into anything. Now, when I tell you that this was classified as more than likely an accidental shooting perpetrated by the victim himself, let me first show you, I guess, this photograph of the front of the victim's truck. Okay, what do we see there? Now, this is going to be an example, maybe, things aren't always as they seem. What's the first thing that came to your mind when you saw that wallet and the cards thrown everywhere? Should that raise your suspicions at all? So, yes. But now let me show you this photograph. Did that do anything for you? Well, it sure did me. Because when I saw it, I jumped to a conclusion that this had to be an accidental shooting based off of that picture of that rifle. Now, I guess I should have mentioned that this is a 30-06. Now, you hunters, you country boys, you know what a 30-06 is, and you know what it can do. That's a very common deer rifle, at least. But look at the condition of it. There's no stock, right? Very unsafe weapon just by the visual of it. But that's kind of what I was looking. Now listen, when I agreed that it was more than likely an accidental shooting, let me explain to you what I thought happened in that first photograph. And I'll get into the timeline and stuff here and explain to you. So, Angela goes to a Christmas party with her new boyfriend, Tony. Angela meets Tony at his house, his apartment, on December 14th, 1987, to go to this invitation only, which is important, Christmas party. While they're there, she's there with his roommate, and Tony. Tony explains how he is having a bad day, just got home from work. They're getting ready to go to this party, but he had a confrontation at work with his friend. They're apparently seeing the same girl. Okay? And when Tony was seeing this girl, the friend was also seeing her. And the friend just wanted to come and clear the air and let him know. Whenever something out of the ordinary takes place, on the day something happens to somebody, it has to be noted. Especially a violent act. Okay? That may have absolutely nothing to do with Tony's death. But it has to be taken into consideration. And thank goodness we have a witness, Angela, who overheard this. So, they go to the party. They pull into almost the very first parking spot in front of the door. That's important in this assessment. They go inside. The people take their jackets, and Tony realized they go to get an adult beverage. Tony realized he forgot his wallet. So they leave. They go back home, which is only, I guess, 15, 20 minutes away, and they come back. And he gets the same parking spot. That parking spot's important. It's right near the door, and as this photograph will attest. They go back inside. The people take their jackets. They get a beer. While they're in there, Angela is noticing there is some tension, it seems, between Tony and this female. It's not overt, meaning it's not a verbal argument, but he seems preoccupied with her, staring at her table, and she's with like 4 guys. Now remember, this is an invitation-only event. The object of his attention, this girl, this blonde, goes up to get food, and Tony gets up and takes Angela with him and says, hey, I'd like you to meet so-and-so. Angela says, hey, I met her, but it wasn't like a nice meet and greet. It was more like, how dare you introduce her to me? There was something there, but it was implied. She didn't know what it was, but she could sense it. Tony was very distracted, and this girl seemed very, very angry at Tony for whatever reason. Well, again, we wouldn't know any of this if it wasn't for an eyewitness, right? We would just have a dead body. But we have all this insight. So we have to try to put it together to make it fit what happened. Now, Tony goes back to his table with his food. He's eating with his date, Angela. At some point in time, he gets up and he says that he has to go outside to his truck. Now, they had just been there a short amount of time. He gets his coat. To me, it's very cold, okay? But he gets his coat, which means to me he's going not just outside. Remember I said it's key to where they park. They're right by the front door. He doesn't have to walk a long way to his truck. But he gets his coat. And she's like, oh, all right, yeah, I guess I'll go with you. And he's like, no, I'll be right back. He goes. She's waiting there. 10, 15 minutes go by. She decides she's going to go look for him. He didn't come back. So she walks outside. Now remember, she doesn't have to walk far. She walks out. The truck's right there. She walks around the truck. She looks in the truck. Now she describes the truck, the back seat being messy, meaning a lot of clothing. She saw no weapon, no nothing, but everything's fine in the truck. Everything's fine around the truck. She walks around the truck, but she sees 3 men walking through the parking lot, which isn't very uncommon. She hears a vehicle like peeling out and taking off, but she doesn't see anything abnormal. So she goes back inside, thinking to herself, maybe I missed him somehow. She doesn't know how, but you know how those things work. You think, okay, well, maybe he snuck in the back, whatever. She went back inside, not there, and all of a sudden, there's an announcement, and they say, would the party of Anthony, not Tony, Anthony, Michael Brown, I think is what they said, please come to the front. She goes up there, and there's an off-duty police officer who does security at the place, who had talked to her earlier, has some sort of driver's license or ID card of Tony's in his hand and said, is this the guy you're with? She said, yes. He said, you need to come with me. They go outside into the parking lot, and Tony is dead by his truck, laying outside on the ground. They put her in the squad car. Police are there already. And that's one of the things that I don't understand. Remember, I only have snippets of the police report. I don't have a lot of narrative. But it seems there's a discrepancy. This is around 8:30, but the police report that I see says 11:30. It's 8:30 according to Angela. Now, she's in the squad car. In her mind, she's thinking he was a victim of hit and run. And when she gets in the squad car, there's two other people in the back seat, a male and a female. And the female is screaming and crying hysterically. So much that she remembers. Now, remember, this is over 40 years ago, 30 years ago. She remembers telling the girl to shut up, that it's not helping anything. But Angela doesn't know that her friend had been shot. In her mind, she just thinks she remembers the car peeling out in the parking lot, and that's what she thinks. So that's the scenario. Okay? She ends up going to the police station. They interview her, and that's when she learns that he was shot. Now, with all that said, I look at the crime scene stuff, the photographs, and I look at that gun. What do you have to look at? Where? Where on the body is Tony shot? So I'm not going to show you Tony's body or the wound, but he's shot in the abdomen. Okay? Almost a straight line from his stomach. Entrance is in the stomach and exiting his back. Now, when I look at the truck and I look at the gun, and this is what I did when I first looked at it, that made sense to me. Okay? If Tony is a victim of homicide, number one, I would expect that someone is going to use a different weapon than Tony's own gun. That was Tony's gun. Okay? Now, there is a spent cartridge in the chamber, which leads to that was the weapon that was used. Because you have to rule out, okay, he's shot in the stomach. Someone try to rob him and shoot him in the stomach? Was there a jealousy issue? What is it? But the medical examiner specifically states he was shot by a high velocity rifle. Contact wound. Now, can they determine that? Well, you determine that by the suit, by the stippling, the ripping and the tearing of gunpowder near the entrance wound. And this showed it. So they said it was a contact wound from a high velocity rifle. Well, listen, I know it's Dallas, Texas. And I know back in 1987, probably 50% of the population was driving around with rifles in their vehicles. Now, we used to do in Pennsylvania, you go to school with a rifle. You have your gun rack in the back of your pickup truck. Remember that? Some of you do, some of you don't. But it's a contact wound. So initially, I'm saying to myself, I cannot rule out that somebody else shot him with a rifle because it's 1987. It's Texas. People carry rifles. Now, what bothers me is that nobody heard a rifle shot. They're quite loud, okay? I've shot many rifles. That bothers me. But number two is the location, again, of that entry. If somebody's trying to kill somebody and they have a rifle, or any gun for that matter, you aim at their chest or at their head. That rifle on the back seat of the truck, Tony's 6'1", I want to say. I believe with him standing up, it lines up with the back seat of that truck. As if he's reaching in the back seat. Remember, it had all these clothes and stuff in there. To grab something, and it goes off, and it hits him in the stomach, and he falls. Now that makes sense to me. Okay? That made sense to me. The condition of that rifle, the location of the wound in his stomach, and knowing from the medical examiner it was a high-powered rifle that killed him, it made sense to me. Until I went to bed. And I started thinking about things. Now, I told you I would get back to the very first photograph that we looked at, which was his wallet on the front seat with all the cards from the wallet, right? How does that happen? Well, remember when I said somebody announced over the system, Anthony, I think Michael Brown party, come to the front, and that off-duty police officer had the card? I assumed, and I still assume, that the wallet was gone through by a police officer until his ID or something with his name is found and they go inside and search for his party. But does that make sense to you? Because now that I think about it, it doesn't make sense to me. Look again at this picture. Why would you have to do that in order to get his driver's license or a credit card or something with his name on it? I don't like that. If that was a police officer that did it, it's disrespectful, number one. Two, it ruins the integrity of your crime scene. Why would you have to do that? You open a wallet, you pull out a card. I mean, how many cards do you have to go through till you find something with his name on? 17 cards that are laying on the floor there? And you just pull them and you're just throwing them out? Sure, it's possible. Is it probable? If it is, it's piss poor management at a crime scene. I don't like that. The information that Angela told me is that police found his wallet in his pants. And that's why I assumed, okay, well now we see a picture of it on the front seat with cards everywhere, but it's nowhere in the police report. Should we assume that that wallet was not gone through by the offender looking for something? That's just one of the things that bother me. Another thing that bothers me, and you can see it in this picture here. Okay, what do you see that's in this photograph? I see a beer bottle in the front console, and that matches up with the police report. But look in this photograph again. Where's that beer bottle now? Why is that moved? Listen, when things are manipulated at a crime scene in 1987, it doesn't mean it's something nefarious all the time. Crime scenes are treated differently now than they were 30 years ago. That's just the facts. That's how it is. That bottle, to me, is the key to this death. That bottle. Why? Because Angela rode in that vehicle. She sat up front. Look at this photograph. You see that blue purse down there? That's hers. She didn't take it into the Christmas party. She said there was no beer bottle in there. That's not his. That's not hers. Whose is it? According to the police report, they did find fingerprints on that. Now, originally I thought, well, maybe that is why this bottle is moved, because they printed it. But they didn't print it right there at the scene. So why move the bottle? A very logical explanation is that they were looking inside that console for something. And so they moved that bottle and placed it there on the seat. That's my theory. But this is what defense attorneys do, and this is what conspiracy theorists do. They look at something like that, and then they bring it up in court. Well, detective, if you look at this picture right here, you can see clearly that the bottle's on the console. You look at this picture, and you see it's not. And if they don't have a reasonable explanation for that, that places reasonable doubt in the juror's mind. Now again, the bottle being moved doesn't bother me. Whose fingerprints are on it? I'm hoping it's not the police officer that moved it. But since I haven't heard anything else, I'm starting to wonder. But you could get DNA off the lip of that now. So, another thing that is troublesome to me is this picture here. Do you see that? That's a belt buckle. How does that come off? Now, I know he was shot in the stomach by a high-powered rifle. My explanation, I guess, is that if the barrel of the weapon is pressed up against his stomach as he's leaning in, getting whatever he's doing, and that weapon discharges, that front sight could have snagged that belt buckle and recoiled and pulled it off. But man, really? You know what I mean? Really? That's what it is? I don't know. But that bothers me. In his cowboy hat, the way it's placed, how it's laid there on the floor. Is that where it was found? Or is it something like the wallet where they had picked it up and put it in there? But then why photograph it? I have more questions than I have answers. Let me look at my template here. One spent round in the gun. Bullet wound was lower right abdomen. Exit lower left back. Greed, sex, or revenge. It's got to be greed or revenge. 30-06. They found 2 live rounds in the rear of the truck. This is intriguing to me as well. But because of the mess of the truck in the back, I don't know if that means anything or not. You know what I mean? The beer bottle, the guest list. Remember I said that's important. I kept reaching out to Angela and I was like, who were the people in the back of the squad car? There's some of you that have been asking that this whole time, waiting for me to get back to that, right? I don't know. That's what's troublesome. She doesn't know. They're not mentioned in the police report. Partial police report that I have. I don't think I have everything. I hope not. If the female in the back is crying and screaming, I mean, yes, it could be just a witness. Okay? It very well could be just a witness that came upon it. But it could be something a lot more. They're involved somehow, or they wouldn't be in the back of the squad car. That's all there is to it. Running the fingerprints through APHIS that were on the beer bottle. I would hope that they would do that. There was a paternity issue going on. Tony was going through a divorce also. Tony was a ladies' man when we look at his victimology. He was a good-looking guy. He dated a lot of women. Nothing unusual, but problems can arise from that. One being he was going through a divorce. Two being he had another girl pregnant. And three, he obviously had something going on with this blonde that was inside who was, I believe, the owner's daughter. The owner of the old Top Rail Ballroom. A lot of motives there. Now again, on the surface, when you look at those, okay, he has a paternity issue. He got somebody pregnant. Maybe somebody's dad isn't happy about that. He's going through a divorce. I mean, she's not happy about that. He's got something going on with this owner's daughter in here. That's not good. He had just gotten in a fight kind of earlier with a friend who was dating the same girl. All these things are going on, but they may not mean nothing. And he walks out, gets something out of the back of his truck. That gun goes off, shoots him in the stomach, and that's it. And all these other things have nothing to do with anything. Yet, we don't know that. Not yet we don't. So we can't rule them out. Talked about the autopsy. Blood alcohol. He did have alcohol in his system, but he wasn't drunk. It was only like 0.05. So he wasn't drunk, and he had no drugs in his system. He wasn't a druggie. That was one of the questions that I raised to begin with, because we have to determine why he went outside. Remember, this is pre-cell phone, so it ain't like he got a text from some hot girl that said, hey, meet me outside. Or got a text from a drug dealer. According to everything, he didn't do drugs. And he didn't have any in his system. They didn't find anything on him. So why did he have to go outside? That's key. That's what we have to figure out. He parked under a street light. The street light didn't work. But it doesn't matter because it's so close to the front of the bar and the front door that, to me, I don't know. It's just he's not walking clear across the parking lot 25, 50 yards. It's right there. It's so visual. I am not a conspiracy guy. I believe you guys all know that, right? Things are usually what they seem. I do believe that here, in a way. And let me explain that. I believe that Tony was accidentally shot by his own weapon, by his own actions. I do believe that. it's very important to try to figure out where that weapon was. Meaning, in this photograph, you see it laying in the back seat with the barrel pointing right out the door where he was laying. Perfect trajectory to his stomach. But there are other reports, meaning it doesn't say in the actual police report where the gun was found. Just like the wallet. It doesn't say where the wallet was found. Angela remembers the detective saying the weapon was found next to him. But in this photograph, you see it pointing right there. Now, again, conspiracy theorists will jump on that and say, it was planted. It's a cover-up. Well, I'm not going to go there right away, but it's something that's going to stay in the back of my mind. We have to know where that gun was found. I believe that I'm gonna go off of the photograph because it matches the wound pattern in his stomach. And remember, somebody isn't going to kill somebody. They do, but it more than likely is going to be a shot to the chest or a shot to the head, not into the stomach, and not by his own weapon. Now, what's the word I'm looking for? The only way that it could be different is if there was a struggle for the weapon. Now that I will entertain. But again, because of that wound pattern, where it entered, where it exited in the stomach, I don't know. Okay? I will say that the preponderance of the evidence, the totality of everything, leads me to believe that gun went off from the back seat, hitting him, and he fell down. Now, I don't know whether that door was open, whether the front door was open. It doesn't say. It's always in the details. The details will solve everything. It's like the Brenda Condon case. One bottle of beer on that counter or 4 makes a big difference. So I need to know whether that back door was open. He went outside for a reason. Remember when Angela, she went out and looked for him and he wasn't there. If he was laying dead, she would have saw him. Where was he? Now again, I must say this, as hurtful or as, damaging as it could be to Angela, who reached out to me, I have to wonder if her account is all entirely true. Remember, because through the passage of time, 30 years, our thoughts fade. And what we think we believe may not be what it is. Now, that's no indication of her character. That's just the way it is. But if she says that she went out and looked, and maybe her time frame's off, but if she says she went out and looked, I got to believe that. That's not something that I think would fade. He was found with his jacket on. He took his jacket, which means he's planning on being out there. Remember, the truck is parked right there. If you're going out to your truck like he said he was, just for a minute to get something, why do you need your coat? And remember, this is very important. It's not like he had the coat on the back of his chair. He had to valet his coat. He had checked his coat in. So he has to tell somebody. By the time they get it, he could have been back already with no coat. Outside, get it, come back in. But he took his coat. Where was he going? Now remember, this is invitation only to this event. What the police failed to do was to get that. Because if he was murdered, more than likely, the suspect is on that event, that guest list. And if he's not, how about the two people in the back of the squad car? I'm sure they got their names, but we just don't see them here. But this is a perfect example of if this is a homicide, how things were done, and the crime scene photos and stuff are manipulated. That's how things were done back then. It's unfortunate, but it doesn't mean it's nefarious. I mean, it doesn't mean there's a cover-up. Okay? Some people will say, well, that off-duty cop who came in with his driver's license or whatever, he killed him. It's very possible. And then they cover up. Yeah, but in the heat of the moment like that, I don't know. Anything's possible. But is it probable? Because of that condition of that weapon and the location of his wound, I just think that it's more unlikely than not he did this himself by accident. But we have to ask ourselves, why? To me, it's almost as if, what's he going into the back seat of that vehicle for? Right? It's my belief that probably more than likely he was going for that gun. They had the gun tested, okay? They couldn't match the bullet fragments from inside his body. It was a through and through wound, so you don't have the spent cartridges, but you have fragments. You couldn't match those fragments to that live ammunition or the rifling of that barrel. Doesn't mean it didn't come from that. They just can't say for sure. I believe that it did. The trigger pressure, the amount of pressure that it takes to pull that particular 30-06 is 6 pounds. That is a lot. But he had so much junk in the back of that. I can't see him pulling that weapon out and it just discharging. It's almost as if he had to hit that trigger. But was he pulling it out because he was going to use it? Somebody was threatening him. I don't know. He wasn't a fighter. But we all can fight when we need to, depending upon the situation. But again, it goes back to, why did he have to go outside? Did he go outside with that blonde who was giving him dirty looks and stuff? And a confrontation happened out there. And was she drinking that beer bottle? And they were in his truck. I don't know. Whose beer bottle is that? That's key. According to Angela, that wasn't hers and that wasn't his. It's in the center console. It's not like it's just laying outside next to the body where, somebody was drinking it and could have thrown it. It's a glass bottle. It's in his center console. That means somebody was up front with him at some point in time. Or it's his. But according to Angela, that wasn't his type of beer. That's not what he was drinking. I gotta say, this one has got me curious. I don't want to let it go because I feel there's more there. Meaning, very well could have been an accidental gunshot wound, but he he may have been going for that weapon for a reason. He went outside. Something was happening. Altercation of some sort. Now, to throw some more weirdness onto this case, look at this photograph. Now, that sure looks like a comforter that has blood on it. But and I'll show you a picture of his body that's covered up. That looks like a sheet. Now, some of these crime scene photographs I could tell were taken at the police impound lot. That's where I think these were taken. Because obviously in the other ones, we only see, looks like a tape case. Some said it was a briefcase, but it looks like, remember back in the 80s, we used to keep tapes in them? Whatever he has in it, I don't know. But I don't see no comforter, and I don't see a bunch of clothing that Angela said was absolutely there. So where did all this clothing go? She described it as almost like a laundry basket full of clothes exploding in the back seat. I don't see that. But I see this blanket that looks like it has bloodstains on it, which I assume, and I hate to assume, but it looks like to me they covered maybe his body with that and then shoved it in his back seat and went to the impound and photographed and fingerprinted things. Does that not add more mysterious and intrigue to it, if not idiocracy? If they did do that, I don't know what to think of it. Again, it looks like a comforter, but the body looks like it's covered by a sheet. And why would they throw that in the backseat of the vehicle? A lot of things just don't make sense in this case. So I'm glad that I was able to take a second look at it. And I guess if he shot him, and again, I don't believe suicide at all. You can take that off the table. You're not going to shoot yourself in the stomach to do that. If anything, it's an accidental wound, and I believe that. But he was reaching for that weapon, I think, for a reason. He went outside for a reason. Something happened. Those 3 guys in the parking lot, remember? A car peeling out. So a lot of things just don't make sense in this case. And I'm not one to... I am one to say the most simple explanation is usually what it is. Usually. I don't see that here. It's 50-50, right? I do see it because I do believe that weapon caused that injury. And I do believe it was more than likely his doing. Accident. But there was a reason. So, does it really matter if he got into an argument out there with somebody and that a girl was drinking a Corona beer or whatever brand that is, and it's important to figure out what brand that is, and whose fingerprints on it, if it was an accident? Well, it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to the people that care for Tony, and that's what's important here. Okay? And, if that was the case, if it was an accident, those people need to come forward. Hey, he was meeting me out there. I owed him money. We got into an argument. He said he was going to his truck. I heard a gunshot. Well, come out and say that. So we don't have this mystery for all these years, and let the family, get answers and rest in peace, knowing what happened to their loved one. And this is also a lesson in crime scene photography and crime scene etiquette, what to do and what not to do. And I think we have learned in law enforcement, just like anything, moving forward, you learn. You don't touch anything. I'm having a hard time believing that a police officer would go through his wallet like that and throw those things on the floor. Maybe he did. But to me, it just looks like somebody was looking for something. And apparently they ruled out robbery. How much money did he have in his wallet? I would think that if it was robbery or somebody was looking for something, they would have just taken the wallet and left. Why? Because you're not going to stand at the front of the doors, the light in the truck did not open or did not turn on when you open the back rear doors, but they did the front. Now that's where the wallet and the contents are found. Somebody's not going to stand there with that light on them that close to the front door of the club after you just killed somebody and are going through the contents of you just take the wallet and go. You're not going to stand there and just keep flipping. That's why I think more than likely a police officer did that. But it's wrong. Because then you photograph it. So now 30 years when a cold case detective gets it and he's looking at it, he's like, well, what the hell is this? Is this a clue? Is this how this was found? Because I guarantee you the police officer didn't annotate that in his report. Yeah, I arrived on scene. I saw the decedent laying there. I reached into his back pocket, got his wallet to identify him. I opened up the front door so I could see. Remember, the street lamp was off. That was above the vehicle. So it's dark out. I have to see. Open up the front door. I'm pulling out his cards, trying to find his name, his driver's license. No. Oh, here it is. So I did all of that. No, they're not going to put that in the police report. But it very well could be exactly what happened. So, again, I think this was an accidental death, an accidental shooting. But I think there was something that led up to it that's a mystery. Why he went outside. But I think more than likely they didn't cause his death. Meaning it was a chain reaction, him going outside because of them and getting in the back seat and doing what he was doing, whether he was getting his gun, whether he was reaching for something else and it went off. I do believe that happened. The belt buckle, the hat, all that is mysterious to me, but I believe it all can be explained through an accident or somebody moving things, because that hat should have been laying next to him because he was wearing it. But instead, it's on the front seat or front floorboard, which makes absolutely no sense. It's almost as if a person picked it up, police officer, and placed it there, and we'll never know. That's the way things were done. So, but you look at the wound pattern again, the condition of that weapon, the spent cartridge in that weapon, contact wound. To me, through my training, my experience, I would say that this is more than likely an accidental shooting. But the mystery, that's not the mystery. The mystery is why he went outside and what conflict or what altercation took place to have him reach in that back seat. So that's today's deep dive. Thank you for going through this with me. This is educational for you, for me, and for people to learn, hey, family lived with this for all those years, and they want answers. Sometimes you can give them answers, sometimes you can't. But it's also a learning experience of how cool case detectives get crime scene photos from way back then, maybe no police reports, and you have to try to make sense of it. And sometimes your first instinct isn't always correct. Usually, I believe that it is. But in this case, hey, couple of things. She deserves more. She trusted in me. She wrote all this down. She labeled everything. She did things correctly. She sent it to me. I owe her more of than just, hey, let's look at it for an hour and then be done with it. No. Let's spend some time here on it. She deserves that. Tony deserved that. His family deserves that. And then two, my natural curiosity. Because remember, as a good detective, that's all you need. It's a natural curiosity. That got the better of me. Why was that belt buckle there? Why did he go outside? Why was that beer bottle now moved from the console to the front seat? And why was the wallet's contents all strewn out? I think I've answered all those. So in my mind, for the most part, I am satisfied with this assessment. The one thing that just still bothers me is why he went outside. We might not ever know the answer to that. And that's the sad reality of cold cases. But accidental shooting, accidental death, I believe. That's my opinion. Thanks for watching Unsolved No More. Haynes out.